Okay, for this one, this is not a typo here. We have a y squared here, but this one purposely is given without a power. So that is correct. You have 2x squared minus y to the first power. So the question is, well, do I want to solve this one by substitution or elimination? You could actually do either one on this one. This one is actually easy to solve because there's no square on that one. You can solve for y and you're not going to have any square roots happening, so you could do that. However, you're going to end up putting this into the top equation, then you have a x squared squared, so you probably would get a fourth power. Might be a little harder to factor, but again, you could still choose to do it by substitution if you wanted to. Instead, I'm going to choose to do this one by elimination. It's going to be a little bit easier for factoring purposes. But again, just know that you could also do it by substitution, either method. Okay, so I want to eliminate, because these don't have the same power, I can't eliminate the y's because this is squared and that's to the first power. You want one that has the same power. So I'm going to eliminate the x squares. So this is similar to the last example. There's a 1 that comes in front of that. I want to make one negative 2 and one positive 2. I'll choose to multiply the first equation through by negative 2. So I'll do that. The bottom one is going to stay exactly the same. I don't have to multiply that because then I'll get negative 2 and positive 2 will cancel when I add them together. When I do that, I'm going to get negative 2x squared. Negative 2y squared is going to equal negative 20. So I get that. Multiplying that all the way through, I get this. This one down below, 2x squared minus y equals negative 1. I want to add the equations together. Now these definitely will cancel out. I'm going to get a 0. So both of the x squareds do cancel. For these, notice that these are not the like terms. So make sure you don't make the mistake of adding it together and making it negative 3y squared, because you can't do that because you don't have the same power on each one. So these are actually considered two separate, they're not like terms. So I have negative 2y squared. I'm adding a negative, which means that would really just be a minus. So I have minus y. These two I can add together and you get negative 21. Because you have a quadratic, you want to get this equal to 0 so that way you can factor and get your two answers for y. Now you could just add the 21 over and just do that. However, I'm going to instead move these two guys across the equal sign instead because I want to make the y squared positive. It'll make it easier for factoring. So if I take both of these and move them across to the right hand side, they both become positive. 2y squared plus y. This one I'm not moving. That's still going to be minus 21 because I'm not changing that sign at all. I'm leaving it the same. So I get this as my quadratic. 2y squared plus y minus 21 equals 0. Now I want to factor this one. Okay, so if I factor that, I'm going to do this one by trial and error. I know that I have to have a 2y and a y here. And 21, I can do 7 and 3. So if I start with 7 and 3 here, I want to get a 1 in the middle. I can do that if I make this 2y times 3, that's 6, and then I have a 7. So I will be able to get a 1 there. If I make this minus and make that plus, I get 2y plus 7, and then y minus 3, I would get 2y squared minus 6 plus 7 would give me the 1 in the middle, and then I get 7 times negative 3 minus 21. So this is the correct way to factor. Now, if I solve this one, I'm going to get two answers. I get y is equal, if I take this one instead of equal to 0, I would subtract the 7, divide by 2, I would get y is equal to negative 7 halves, and the other one I would get would be y equals 3. These are my two answers for y, and remember you have to put these back into the original equation, either one, to get the corresponding x value. It's probably going to be easier to put it into the bottom equation because that one doesn't have a square on it and it might make things a little bit easier. So I'm going to be using the bottom equation and I'm going to put each of these individually into that bottom equation. So first, let's start with this one. I'm going to do 2x squared minus, don't forget you have a double negative there. So negative will give you plus 7 halves equals negative 1. So if I simplify it, I get 2x squared plus 7 halves equals negative 1. So I want to get rid of the fraction here to make it easier. So I'm going to take that equation right here. I'm going to multiply this whole thing through by 2. By doing that, then I can eliminate the fraction on the bottom. So 2 times 2, you'll get 4x squared. This 2 and that 2 will cancel. You'll get plus 7. That's going to equal negative 2. We want to subtract 7 from both sides. 4x squared is going to equal negative 9. When you subtract the 7 from both sides there, you get negative 2 minus 7. And then if I divide both sides by 4, I get this. Now, what it results here is you have x squared equals a negative number. Anytime you have that happening, you're not going to get an answer, because if I were to take the square root of both sides, I'm taking the square root of a negative number, which I would end up getting an imaginary number as a result, and you can't have imaginary numbers. So because of that, this one actually is not going to give us a real solution. So therefore, I know that the first one, the y equals negative 7/2, that's not really going to be one of my answers, because I can't get a real number with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and cross that whole thing out. So negative 7/2 is actually not going to give me an answer. However, the 3, let's go ahead and look at that one. I'm going to put that into the bottom equation, 2x squared, and I have minus 3 equals negative 1. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So if I do, 2x squared is going to equal 2 by adding 3 to both sides. Divide both sides by 2 and you'll get x squared equals 1. And then finally you're going to square root both sides, and when you do, you get x is equal to plus or minus 1. So you actually have two answers here. When x is 1, you get 3. When x is negative 1, you also get 3. So when you write that out as a coordinate, you'll have 1, 3, and you'll have negative 1 and negative 3. So this problem, even because this one didn't work, you're only going to get 2 solutions on it, and these would be these 2 points right here.